very warm welcome to our Changemakers podcast. I'm happy to introduce you today to our guest. Hello, Markus. Thank you for joining our podcast today.
Hi, Thea. Super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So we wanted to focus on the importance of green investing on the energy transition. But before we start, I would like to shortly introduce you to our audience. So, Markus, you are an investment director at the GreenTech VC of SEB Bank, and we got to know you through our extensive Series B negotiations. And we are very happy to have a GreenTech enthusiast at our side. Now, back to your personal experience. You have extensive energy and digitalization knowledge with many years of experience, such as vice president for the charge and drive growth business for the Finnish energy provider Fortum, or as a green tech fund manager at Almi Invest. So, Markus, you do definitely things in a different way. You're also not the common banking or VC manager you would expect, as you are also an entrepreneur yourself. So you definitely know what startups go through. So please tell us about your experience as a founder.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for the intro, Thea. And it's actually dating back to already 2010. I was working with various energy-related business development within the Finnish utility of Fortum. Ranging from everything that you see is, common goods today, like solar PVs on rooftops. We tried to do that for businesses. We tried to do energy visualization for households and, flexible tariffs. And we tried to do a lot of the stuff that is just now taking off in the market. So basically, we were classically way too early with our products and services in the market. But at the time, I noticed that electric vehicle charging, I believed, was something that would happen big time going forward. And I noticed that there were no standardized ways how to do chargers in the ground. So me and my brother came up with the concept of having standardized charging bases in the ground with modularity, so you could basically attach any other charger and exchange and prepare the streets and whatever type of things that you would have. And for the first couple of 6, 7, 8 years, nothing happened. I mean, it was a struggle, and this was something we were doing on the side, as a hobby. But then I guess in around about 2018, 19, the market really took off, especially here in the Nordics where we're from. But so my brother left and started to run the business as a full time, and I'm in the board of directors and having it as a side note to this regular job that I have. But basically, I guess that the learning is that this classic S curve, you overestimate how things will be in the beginning, and then you underestimate how powerful it is when it really shifts. And I think that is maybe the main learning from that experience, that it takes a very long time. Adding to that, I can say that we took a decision early on to not. We tried to bring in like early investors and angel investors and venture capital, and luckily enough, we had experienced investor we talked to that sort of said that this is probably not a venture capital case. We didn't understand it at the time, but looking back, it obviously was not a venture capital case because the market wasn't there. You had to build the market first, and that's very difficult to do as a small entrepreneur. So I think that happily now in arrears with those advice, at the time it was obviously very tough to not get money for trying to build your company. But now in hindsight, we then built on profitable growth, and we're very lucky to have done that. So we have actually just only one angel investor that came in around 2018. And after that, so we have the largest part still owned by me and my brother. And I think turnover last 12 months was around 3.5 million euros. So super happy to now have a business that is, up and running and profitable, and super happy to have done that experience.
Definitely, then all the funding processes from all sides, from a VC perspective, investments perspective, and as well as a startup founder. But as I mentioned, you're not only an entrepreneur, but also the investment director at the Greentech Venture Capital of SEB, a leading banking group in Northern Europe, founded over 160 years ago. However, the GreenTech is very young in comparison, actually founded in 2020. I read that your core investment theme is the electrification of everything. I think that's a very fascinating claim. What does it mean? What is your core of your venture capital?
Yeah, thanks, Thea. So I think that's a good observation. It's not actually that we set out to have the electrification of everything as our investment strategy. When the GreenTech venture was funded or started, it was with the general notion that green and environmental sort of companies had a more difficult time in raising money, especially if you were doing stuff that were close to industry or hardware, etc. Software was fairly good, at least at the time. Nowadays, climate is more hip, and it's a bit easier, I think. But still, when you're doing hardware, it is difficult for obvious reasons to return also venture capital requirements on your risk. So I'm not saying that's easy, and that hasn't really changed. It's still very difficult to do that. But the bank set out with this objective to channel money to early green investments that is needed to make the transition happen. But so actually, in our mandate, we say that we invest according to the planetary boundaries that has been set up by Stockholm Resilience Center. We believe that is the best holistic framework to actually describe the transition that we need to do, not only in climate, but also in other areas of, for example, biodiversity, water scarcity, etc. But then, obviously, from my background within energy, it was evident that the electrification of everything is so profound, and it has so many benefits in the energy sector. It's so much more efficient to do than the old sort of what I call the waste economy, where a lot of the things that we do is just going to waste, right? So it has been one of the themes where we have absolutely more exposure to, and trying to electrify everything and whatever comes with that. And I think Esferin and the latest investment with you guys is absolutely, the pivot point of the electrification of the whole system. But and to be a bit more maybe concrete, I mean, we've invested in companies such as heat pump manufacturing that is turning, electrifying heating. We've done wave power investments for new renewable resource to add to the production profile. Esferin, obviously, in the flexibility market. We've done measuring of commercial buildings and their energy usage in one of our companies. So it is quite a broad range, but I think that a lot of the companies are tied into the electrification of everything, which is not sort of super fast in one way, but I think it's super strong. So the long-term change is absolutely happening there. And I like to be exposed to that kind of exposed to these kind of companies in our portfolio.
As our podcast is about change makers, I'd also like to ask do you do something different to achieve your goals, or to decide in what companies you invest in, or do you stick to a more, I don't know, traditional approach in banking or investing? How do you identify such companies?
Obviously, a good question. So I think that, first of all, when you prepare or compare it to banking, it's quite obvious that venture capital is quite far on the other end of banking, so to speak. Banking is about securing that you have the low liquidation and that you have recurring payments and solid companies that can return the loans and the required return on those. Whereas obviously venture capital is super high risk and you will see defaults in your portfolio and your companies, but the ones that return will have massive returns. So I think it's the opposite side of the spectrum. But when it comes to then climate, I would say that we do take a very ambitious approach to investing. It means that we not only invest in the software and digital businesses of the energy transition, because I think that is needed and that will happen. And I think that venture capital is normally playing that. That's the normal playing field of traditional venture capital funds. But we are daring to also do the hardware industry close type of investments that are needed for the energy transition to happen. I think that without those, we won't succeed. So we need both. So I think that sets us apart to a large extent. Why can we do that? I think that because we are still funded by the balance sheet of the bank, acting as an independent sort of unit and with our own investment committee from the bank, we can be more patient to reach those returns, and we don't have the same overlay of cost structure that a normal venture capital fund would have. It also means that we don't need to pressure ourselves to put out the funds as fast as a venture, as a externally funded venture capital fund would normally do. So I think those are a couple of pieces of the puzzle that puts us apart from other venture capital players.
Thank you for the insights about your venture capital and your scope in investing. Now I'd like to take a step more into a broader view. I'm interested in your expert opinion. How do you assess the market situation at the moment for investments in green tech startups at the moment in Europe?
I think it's very interesting times, obviously, because it's a bit ambiguous in the way that general venture capital has, we hit a big market turnaround compared to previous years. We're in a recession, I would say, in most of the countries. It means that a lot of capital is scarce. On then the contrary or flip side of that is that a lot of the climate-related venture capital has raised a lot of capital the last couple of years, meaning that there's what we call a lot of dry powder to be invested. And that seems to be driving multiples still, or at least withholding multiples. We thought that this spring would mean a lot of companies being out in the market raising, but we think that is maybe postponing to the autumn, because it seems like many companies have managed to internally with existing founders existing investors, be able to prolong their runway and get maybe convertible loans or bridge rounds. But we think that in the autumn they need to raise the external money. If you put that all in a soup, my best guess is that we will see a lot of funding rounds in the autumn, with also valuations coming down a bit, even in the green tech sector. I was intrigued to see a pitch book release during, I think, Q1 that the green investments have sort of gone up from in the venture capital space. Previously, it was around 8-10% of the investments, and now it's almost up to 20-25% of the investments going to climate. So I think that compared to the other streams or industries of investment in venture, it has been performing still a bit stronger. Yeah.
And would you say it will increase even further? So if you dare to do a forecast on investing in green startups, I don't know, for the next 5 years from now, what would you expect?
5 years, well, it's super difficult, as you know. But if you would have my 5 cents, yes, I think it would. Because a couple of things, it's long enough for this recession to sort of bounce back. And second of that, I think that the performance of these technologies that we see in the green transition are so much better when they are sort of developing. I think you see the electric vehicles and the batteries are, it's just extreme how fast they are developing right now. So you would see many of these things coming out in the market, and thereby additional sort of funds being raised. And I think also that you see politicians pushing for this with the Inflation Reduction Act, and you see the European responding for stimulating investments into the green areas. And I think that that's a massive capital flow that will happen. We basically need to compress normal development cycles that have been around maybe years of 40 to happen now in the years of 10 to 15. That's a massive investment that needs to happen. Hopefully, new technologies in that kind of fast evolving market will get opportunities to get deployed into scale as well. So yeah, my 5 cents would be that it will be even stronger performing in 5 years from now.
Interesting.
Then small maybe caveat for that, we don't know what's happening with the geopolitical landscape right now. And I'm not the expert to say what's happening there, but hopefully we get to peace and order in these terrible things that are happening in Russia and Ukraine. By 5 years, we're in a peaceful situation again.
Yeah, of course, the political situations, but also regulations, political decisions do enhance the energy transition.
And sorry if I can reflect shortly still on that. I think that, we are doing things in US and EU, but then you also see how powerful China is driving this, and especially in the solar PVs and the battery section, it's a very, very big development that sort of independent on what's happening here, then that will also happen and drive cost and technology development way for it.
But also Sweden is a leader in the energy transition. And I just want to get back to that question, because SAB and your GreenTech are located in Sweden. And you said Sweden set some very ambitious targets to increase the renewable energies. The aim is to, I think, achieve 100% renewable electricity production by 2040. And to become carbon neutral by 2045. Besides the expansion of renewables, what are the trends and innovations in Sweden or Scandinavia regarding such climate goals?
I think it's obviously ambitious goals. However, my own thinking on that is that it's a couple of things. First of all, we're very lucky from the start to have a lot of hydropower. Obviously, that otherwise it would probably not been even feasible. So I think that's a good starting point. Then you see the trend of the industry going into green processes, with the steel industry being pushed heavily in the northern of Sweden. You see a lot of data centers being located here because the access to green electricity is high. I think any system that tries to go to 100% renewables will be, for the foreseeable future, quite costly system to push for. I think any system going to the extremes is normally very difficult, and energy, you need to have various resources, and you need to take considerations of situations that are happening on a year of 10 or 20 or 50 years interval. And we do see that probably the climate fluctuations will vary even further going forward with the hotter climate, more moist climate. I think it's a good ambition. I don't think it's necessary to actually reach that goal. If to be honest, I think if we would reach 95 or so of that goal, that would be still a world that would make the very good system and world to be living in. So that means I think that you should have very serious considerations when you look at the complete mix of energy sources that you have available. But definitely the steel industry is driving a change to be based on hydrogen and green electricity in their processes. You see some carbon capture technologies being applied, but you obviously need to understand what are the specific circumstances where this still makes sense with existing technologies, at least, because in Stockholm, Exergi's example here in Stockholm, it's basically that they have a very high concentration of CO2 in their flue gases that still makes that business case valid. Most other existing plants have lower, and then it's much more challenging. So there's a lot that needs to happen. Adding to that, just the build out on the transmission lines and the grid infrastructure needs to be strengthened a lot if we want to have this massive build out in the north of Sweden for either green steel or green hydrogen based production.
Thank you. That already answered how energy-intensive companies adapt. And that was one question I want to ask as well. In Scandinavia, so they find new ways of production or utilizing the provided renewables.
And maybe if I can elaborate, I mean, since the investment we looked at with Esforin is basically pinpointing these challenges that you will have going forward in any market. I think that Sweden and the Nordics has not have as fluctuating power prices that Germany and some of the other countries have seen, but obviously it's increasing a lot. We see batteries and other flexible assets coming into the system in a much higher degree. There are sort of plays here where you try to look at sandboxes of smaller energy systems to play with flexibility. So here I think that, when we looked at Esforin, we really saw that this is the market leader in the industry, and we cannot see, this trend is super strong all over Europe. It's just a matter of time when flexibility becomes a super important thing that any player in the market needs to handle. So I'm looking forward also to bringing Esforin to the Nordic countries and see what value that can bring to many of the industry clients that are here and are obvious clients of the bank as well since many years.
We are super excited to go the path with you to the Scandinavia. And as we also think that flexibility is the key to the energy transition. Now the time is already coming to an end, and our final question we always ask our guests is, who's your favorite change maker? Also, so who do you admire for her innovative spirit?
There are a couple of ones. Obviously, Elon Musk is up there for good and bad reasons, but if I would name one that I think is a key change maker, I think it's really Michael Liebreich, the founder of Bloomberg New Energy Finance, and the work he's doing on bringing, fact-based discussions into the energy world, which is so biased by so much politics and biased by lobbying, etc., because there is so much money involved. I think that Michael is doing a great job in bringing in experts, advocates, and those that oppose him as well into the free discussions of his podcast, Cleaning Up. So I think that if any listener has the possibility to tune into that, I can highly recommend that, because it's experts all over the energy world that is participating. So you get a very condensed information from sort of the ones with the best insights. So we listen to that a lot in the team and utilize that know-how to a large extent. So that would be my shout out to Mr. Liebreich.
Yeah, thank you, Markus, for joining us in our podcast. I think you gave us some truly great insights into your venture capital, but also regarding Sweden and their energy transition goals.
Thank you, Thea. My pleasure.
we very much hope that you, dear listeners, also enjoyed this podcast as I did. If so, you are very welcome to subscribe to our podcast via the usual channels, and we look forward to hearing from you again.